Good morning. Thank you for joining me. I'm grateful to have you along for a new ride. We're now going to enter into the book of James, as you can see from behind me. We're traveling through the book of Genesis all year long, and it's been a marvelous book. I've enjoyed it very much, but we concluded that last time. And now I'd like to step through in a very much of a survey form 5 chapters of the book of James, which will set a semester, which begins at the end of January. So this is kind of in between segment when we'll deal with a little book, and that book is the book of James. Now, as I get started here, that the book of James is not a narrative, generally speaking. There are a few tidbits in there, but most of it is just it's doctrinal, and it's dealing with various principles with regards to live our Christian life and things of that nature. And so it's going to be a little bit of a different study than it was in Genesis is concerned. We're not going to be able to march through characters and that kind of, but I think that you're going to benefit from. We'll do it as a survey, so it'll be blah, 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 blah. Many of you have studied James before, and so this will be, I think, a refresher. And it'll be just really refreshing to you to just see the general overview of the book of James. Well, talking, and let's just get after. For those of you who are studying on your own, or if you're using this part of the School of Biblical Studies, which is not an official part of it, at least at the moment, these are the questions that we're going to have. What I meant by that with regards to School of Biblical Studies is that we will not be sending out the email at the end of the week, we do, but this will be posted to our website so that you'll be able to have it for an archive study, that kind of thing. All right, you got that? All right, here we go. Just like we did with the book of Genesis, we are going to provide you with some picture clues. And this is the picture clue for chapter 1. You can see okay. Now, these picture clues are not going to be quite as good as what Gabriel does. He's really good, but I did this one. But anyhow, as I remember James 1, I think of the number 1, and then I put a cross across the top. Oh, that's a T. And the T stands for trials. And what we're going out the gate in James chapter 1 is that we are told that we should be people who celebrate the trials that come our way, which is I think you would agree with me. It's a pretty mature form of Christianity that we would celebrate the hurts and the pain. Well, that's what we're told in James chapter 1, chapter, and one that it's important for you to get into your mind. Counter somebody, for instance, who's struggling through health problems, financial problems, whatever it may be, and they're really under the gun. Perhaps they're feeling like Satan has really got their hand on them, or his thumb on them, or maybe they're actually blaming God. James chapter 1 is where you need to go. It's a really, really important chapter with regards to that. So there's James. I need to get on the side so that you can see. I switched my picture from Genesis, so now I got to stand on this side and point with my left hand. All right, James chapter 1. Now we're reading through every verse. We are going to read through most of James. As we traverse these 5 chapters, I'll probably not stop and read every verse from every chapter. I'll just try to get the general of that particular chapter. But there's a lot of stuff in James chapter 1 that is relevant to our topic or the picture clue, and that is trials. And so we will see several verses. James, the servant of God, and to the Lord Jesus, tribes in dispersion, greetings. The 12 tribes in dispersion has to do with the Jews that scatter. And they scatter for various reasons. Some of those Jews are Christian Jews, what we call Messianic Jews, Jews that believe in the Messiah, that Jesus is the Messiah. And those Jews have scattered throughout the known world, is writing to them. Some of these have lost their occupations, etc., because they had to from persecution. And so he is now writing to these individuals who are struggling in many of the new contexts, places where they are unfamiliar, kind of thing. He's writing to those, and again, the 12 represents the idea of 12 tribes of Israel, Judaism, and so he's Jewish Christians that have scattered throughout the world. All right? And here is going to be his encouragement to those Christians, and to see how there's going to be many applications to our present day circumstances as well. Odd statement right out the gate, verse 2. James is going to say you need to count it all joy, this kind of trials. That takes you to another level, doesn't it, to Christian maturity. I'll be honest with you. I don't know many Christians who actually get this far in their spiritual. I certainly am struggling to get there, and I suspect you are as well. I actually rejoice when I come to a spot in the road and of trials and tribulations that I stop and I praise God. I'll give you an illustration. Christmas Eve roof, because we have a leak, and I was trying to do some various things with regards to putting flashing in various places, and I had to stick my hand in some shingles in order to get the flashing up in there, and it was really frustrating. And I just felt like the devil was all over me. The sun is beginning to set, and I can't see things very well, and I've got all kinds of splinters in my knuckles, and it just was uncomfortable. And at one point, I just was really frustrated. I said, just out. And I realized what I had done. I had lost my temper, and so I took, and I just laid back on the shingles, and I looked up at the sky, and I said, God, in order for this to work, you're going to have to help me. And you know, the next thing just went right up in there. Now, I got to be honest with you, like the next one, I had more troubles, but I felt a lot better the rest of the evening because I had stopped and with a very decision said, I am not going to let the devil defeat me in this project. Now, I don't often do that. Okay? I'm not trying to brag. I very regularly fail, but that was one success. And I'm not going to say that as I lay there on the shelf of the heavens that I counted it all joy on the roof on Christmas Eve trying to patch a hole in my roof, but I'm getting there. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get there. And so really mature stuff to say in this chapter with regards to trials. The first of which is we really need to develop, we can celebrate it. What is it? What that is? That is the Marines who say it. But anyhow, the whole idea that something is pain leaving the body. I can't get the phrase out of my head. Nuts. But you know, when we are able to go to the gym and we press the weight, we walk on the treadmill and we do whatever, at the end we're really, really tired, but we count it all joy because we know that we built muscle today. Well, more so is true spiritually speaking. When you're up on the roof and the devil's all over you and you can't get flashing in place like you want to, and you're just feeling lousy about everything, have the self-discipline to stop and say, dear God, I need you. Then you can say, I built a little muscle. It's not a big muscle, and I got a long way to go, but I'm building muscle. If we can learn to count it all joy. So count it all joy, my brothers, when various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And that's the whole idea, etc. But it's really more than that. So the idea that when we have our faith tested, that our faith is going to grow to a point of, if you will, stubborn spiritualism. Let me turn off this heater. Hard to believe. Here we are at the end of December. The temperatures are in the 70s. I was in a t-shirt on Christmas on the roof, Christmas Eve. Anyhow, you're not interested in that. What are we talking about? Steadfastness. You got to stay steadfast, and one of the ways to get there is to celebrate the trials that come your way, because this in earlier studies that we've had in the book of Romans, that God disciplines those he loves. And so when God allows you to go through a dark valley, he certainly doesn't allow you to go through it alone. Never. God's going to be right, not acknowledge it, but God is right there with you. But when he allows that dark valley, what he is doing is he's preparing you so that the next time you go through a valley similar to this, it's not going to be nearly as hard. He's developing spiritual muscle. He's developing, let's use James' words, steadfastness, that you hang in there, that you'll be tough, that you're not up. I love the Greek word hupomene. It apparently translated patience. But it means this, it has this quote, steadfastness. I'm going to suck it up. I am not giving in. I will not allow the devil to conquer this process that I am in, this project that I'm trying to overcome. And so on the roof, and I look up at the heavens and I say, dear God, I need you. And he does. And in that moment, I build just a little bit more of suck it up. You can do this next challenge is even greater. Verse 4. And let your steadfastness, we're developing steadfastness, so there's a proof here. The test leads to steadfastness. Steadfastness, when it has its full effect, perfect and complete, lacking. Now, when he says perfect, that certainly doesn't mean that you're going to win. But what it does mean, and really the complete, you got to tie these two together, is that you're getting to a point that eventually it's going to lead you to a moment of conquering, that you're going to be able to overcome, and that you're going to be able to put it behind you, and you're going to be able to move on to the next level of growth. And so steadfastness is what just holds the line. I will not sacrifice this line. Hold this line. And then eventually he can move to the next line. Okay. Now, as you move on into the chapter, he says, lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives generously to all without reproach to him. It's interesting that he mentions this right in the context of trials. And so, although many folks lift this passage context to just talk about wisdom in general, and I suppose there are some general applications you can make, if you're a good Bible student, you keep it in context, and you'll notice that this is actually sandwiched between, we're going to see it in the next here, but it's actually sandwiched between two sections that deal with struggles in life. I need wisdom to be able to deal with that. When I was on the roof, I needed wisdom. God, I don't get it. Why can't I slide that thing under there? Why am I getting all tore up? And, okay. And so he says, in the midst of your trials, ask for wisdom, but watch how you ask here. Well, let him ask in faith. Don't be asking God like, hey, I don't know whether you can handle this, God, that kind of a thing. Like the guys the farmers who needed rain, and so there's a prayer meeting, and they all went to church, but nobody brought an umbrella. Ask in faith. Believe that God's going to do it, because if you don't, then it's like going to God and saying, I don't think you can handle this, but I thought I'd just throw it out your way anyhow. I mean, that's almost blasphemy, isn't it? And so asking faith, no doubting. A guy who doubts is like a wave of the sea that's driven and tossed in and out, not very consistent. For that person must not suppose that he receives anything from the Lord. He's a double-minded man in his ways. Let the lowly brother boast in his exaltation, and the rich in his humiliation. Now, again, with the theme of trial, this is somewhat of an illustration here. The lowly brother is to boast in his exaltation. The lowly brother had to boast about. This is in contrast to the rich brother, because the rich brother should understand the humiliation that he has. He is invested in that which does not build spiritual muscle. The rich brother to this world. That's what concerns me so much about the church today. So much material and convenience. Convenient Christianity just seems to dominate the American church. And it's causing us to really be in a state of humility for God. The lowly brother is the one who can boast in his exaltation. He's the individual who actually gets it. He recognizes stuff down here doesn't matter, and he's building spiritual muscle. For the sun rises, the scorching heat, with you falls away, so also will the rich man fade away in the midst. And so you can see that's not everlasting. This isn't eternal. This is going to burn up. It's just. And so the contrast is, again, staying within the overall theme of trials. So you say, man, I don't have nearly as much as that other guy. Celebrate that. Because the more you got, the more it anchors you to this world. One family's been doing over the holiday season is we've been, bringing Cindy's folks to live with us and that kind of thing, is we've been trying to downsize. And I got to be honest with you, as I stand here, I have been ashamed to see the clutter I have. Gabriel has led the charge. I'm so thankful for him. He's going to Honduras here in about a month, and he's going to spend there. And one of the passions that he has is to be a simple Christian, to really be authentic. And he led us down this path of, we need to downsize into our closet, which, by the way, right now is one big collective closet because we've had to, we're putting two families together. And we looked in there and it was just shameful. It was just shameful. And we began looking through our closet and saying to ourselves, do we really need that? I mean, I have 1.5 years. And so those kind of things we started taking out and we started laying in a pile. You wouldn't believe the size of the pile that we had that we took off to Goodwill. I mean, it was just shameful. That kind of stuff, it not only anchors you to the world, it stresses you out because of the clutter that about you. We have got to lift anchor. We have got to get back to the simplicity of Christianity. And one of the things, especially for the American Christian, that is holding us down is that we got too much. We could actually boast if we were the lowly brother and didn't have a lot. That means I don't have anything to hold me to this world to go at any moment. But to the rich brother who's got all kinds of stuff, it's surrounding him. He said, "Oh, yeah, I want to go to heaven, but not Lord, because I got still things in my bucket list to accomplish, and take care of this, that, and the other." You see how that is? We ought to be at the drop of a hat. We ought to be ready to go to be with the Lord. Right now, I want to go. There is for us to become the lowly brother who recognizes that this stuff of this world is passing away. Then you get into verse 12 and following. Blessed is the man who remains steadfast. Do we not have that word earlier? Yeah, because our context is about hanging in there during the midst of trials. Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial. There's that word. And when he has stood at the crown of life, that's what we all want. We got parents who are driving halfway across the state regularly to put their children and band and basketball tournaments and whatever it may be. And yet those same children are losing their soul to the devil because they're investing in the materialism of this world. And he says, we need to teach our children to pursue the crown of life. And the most secure in this life are those who are not attached to this life, but rather are ready and willing to go to the next. Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be preachers or missionaries. There's no teaching to be doctors and lawyers and stuff. And that's the way Christianity seems to operate today. Christian parents are not interested in having their children become missionaries or preachers, or mamas teaching their little girls to grow up longing to be married to a preacher or missionary, because what security is there in that? You can see how God's going to judge them. And I think he's going to judge them rather harshly because of their lack of priorities. He says, God has promised to those who love him this crown of life. Let no one say tempted of God. Now, this is a little bit of a transition, but it's a very important part of the whole overall theme of trials. And that when you're in the midst of trials, there's a difference between going through a part of a temptation, being tempted. God does not tempt you. A temptation, because that is an enticement to do something wrong. And God will never do that. What he might do, however, you to encounter a difficulty, so spiritual muscle, and be able to overcome the things that come your way by the evil one. Okay? And so the principle here is very important, that we not lay temptation at God. God might allow you to go through some difficult times, spiritual muscle, but he is not going to entice you to do sin. And then you have another series of steps here. The person is tempted. All right, so what is temptation exactly? Each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Pause for a moment and recognize that he is not saying that temptation is a sin. He is saying that temptation can develop into sin, because you might notice that sin is the third step process. So a person's tempted, and then that temptation, it grows into desire. My dad used, and you've heard it. You can't keep over your head, but you can keep them from building a nest in your hair. You can't keep bad thoughts, temptation from away, but you can keep it from taking root in your, to the point that it becomes desirous, and you stop and you focus on it, you meditate, you try to figure out, is there any way that I can do this righteously? You've done that one, right? And you salivate over something that is, you should have known step number one, this is a temptation, I don't go there, but now you started into the process of desiring it. Okay, now notice we're still not, so it's temptation, desire, and even desire is there. It doesn't necessarily mean that you've sinned. It means that you're well on your way to sinning, tempted. But not everybody desires the temptation. They don't stop and meditate on it, but everybody is tempted. Many of us are also desiring the temptation. When we see the temptation, we actually want the temptation. The point of sin is when it's conceived, it gives birth. And that birth process leads to sin. Sin is when you miss the mark. It's when you do the wrong thing. It's when you convince yourself to go the wrong direction. And there's a fourth part, but watch it. You're tempted. That's not a sin. You desire the temptation. That's not a sin, but you're going down the path. Actually give in. Then he says, and sin is when it is fully grown, brings forth separation, death. You're separated from God and no longer part of his context. That's when you really, really got a problem. But notice the process here. And notice that it's in the context of trials, right? God doesn't but he allows certain difficulties to come your way. And oftentimes within those difficulties, the devil will enter in and process that God is using to bring you to greater spiritual maturity. The devil will get in there and he will begin to tempt you. God doesn't care about you. God's not listening to your prayers. And in excesses, he begins to draw you towards death. Satan, that is. You deceive, my brother. Every good and every perfect gift is from above. So whatever good stuff that does come your way, make sure that you give credit to God. Have luck. I do not use the word luck. Coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no notice that not like the sea, the waves of the sea. No, there's no variation. Of his own was forth by the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruit creatures. Yeah, and that brings us to verse 18, does it not? So, by way of review, then I guess I could put the questions up, and you can and you can have those questions. So, by way of review, then what we've covered here, James chapter 1 deals with trials, and as we see trials come our way, number one, we're supposed to be thankful, celebratory. That requires some real maturity on a Christian's part to do. And the reason is because that is going to draw us to steadfastness. As you go through difficult them, you become spiritually stronger. And that's the desire that God has for you. But the problem is sometimes blame God for part that takes place within the struggle. And that is temptation. Remember, temptation is not from God. The temptation is from the devil. And so what the devil does is he enters into the moment of discipline that God is giving to you. He's allowing you to go through a difficult valley of the shadow of death, Psalm 23. And in that process, the devil says, hey, I've got this a weak moment. And he's on the roof. And he's trying to fix the hole in his roof. And he's stressed. He got two different families living down there underneath him and priorities that are working in his brain right now. This is a good opportunity to see if we can get Sonny to sin. Uses a dark moment, a difficult moment in your life, and the devil enters. God is tempting you to sin. God is to have more faith. God doesn't. God is drawing you to have more faith in him. And so God doesn't tempt you with sin, I should say. God is enticing us to come to him. Satan is enticing us to give up on God. And so I stuck my hand up underneath those shingles, and I got all those fiberglass little splinters in my knuckle, and I just that was the moment when we did it. We got into a level of frustration. Now, I never doubted God. I never cursed him. I didn't say a bad word, kind of things, but I definitely came to a point of frustration, a lack of, and in that lack of self-discipline. Moment that I was pushing away from God, because God is all about discipline. It's all about having things in order. Satan is all about lack of discipline and chaos to your life. And so I needed that moment to lay back on the shingles and look up at the sky and say, God, I need you. In that moment, you see what I did? In that moment, I stopped the temptation, desire, sin, death. And what I did is I cut him. And I said, now, we're not going to that. I'm not sinning. Well, I'm not going to say a bad word. I am not going to abandon God. I'm not doing that. And so I stopped it. And in that one, which is all too few in my life, but in that one moment, I actually conquered. And so there you find the progression of temptation. And you also find the beauty of trials if we'll allow them to have the impact in our life that they need to. Time for prayer. I got several things. Forgive me. I got several things we need to pray about. Would you please be really hit me recently? Revival of Authentic Christianity. Over the weekend on Christmas Eve, after I got down off the roof, the family and I we watched together the Christmas special, and it shows the dramatization of Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus being born and placed in the manger, and has another parallel scene. I cried. I just cried. But one of the things that the producer said about The Chosen, he said, when we started this project, the one primary goal that we wanted more than anything, make it authentic. I'm really concerned about the church and its authenticity. This morning, and you might be one of them, you're going to go to a place, vaulted ceiling, padded pews, looking up at an exalted pulpit. You're going to follow the lead of somebody else who basically manipulates. You're going to take prepackaged communion cups and, probably peel back and has a little piece of bread on the top, etc. It really, really challenges authenticity, does it not? On the other hand, if you go back to the first century and notice how they did it, it was so simple. It was just so basic. And I'm really concerned. I just saw this morning that somebody talking choices about where they're going to go to church. That's a phrase we really need to cut out of our vocabulary, our lingo. Go to church. You are the church. You don't go to church. You might be in a greater gathering of the church, but as far as going to church, that implies that somehow you're not part of the church when you're not with the greater gathering. And what it does is it allows us to streamline our Christianity to the point to go to a place, a holy place, and there we participate in these holy activities, and we can claim then that we've had some kind of a spiritual moment that has been pre-manufactured, so right off the conveyor belt. Pray for the authenticity of Christianity. Those who are standing up to the mandates of our would-be king president, please be in prayer for them. I've got a lot of friends who are even losing their jobs because they're just simply not willing to take something into their system that they believe in. So they're guarding the temple of God. Ruling that's coming down from the Supreme Court, one of my lifetime, to see Roe v. Wade overturned, and we badly because of the thousands upon thousands of little babies that are being slaughtered in the womb. Be in prayer for that. And a very dear friend of mine, and she's actually and she lives in Pennsylvania. And Edie has been hospitalized with, I think it was upper respiratory stuff, not COVID or anything like that. But what is it? I don't think it was pneumonia either. But anyhow, I love her very, very much. And so if you remember her, I've got friends who do have COVID or are in the hospital right now, individuals who are struggling with, etc., that I know of, some very, very dear friends who are in foreign countries. A very good friend who's just began with us as far as the School of Biblical Studies is concerned, and he is in Africa, and various challenges coming. Folks on our prayer list, please keep all of their prayers. Please. Got to get some water. All right, moving on. You got to love the Lord's Day. I tell you, it's become my favorite because I get to share this time with you. And then after I'm going to go into the house, and all of my family is going to gather together. Both my boys and their families will be there, and my mom and dad will be there, and we're going to sing, and we're going to pray. But everything service, our home church, everything touches communion. It's all about, and we're going to really, really simple. And after that, we're going to eat together. It's a wonderful time. But here we are, live. We looked at great balls of fire. We're looking at learning from Elijah. And last time we looked at the idea of preparing for the power, and the whole great balls of fire coming down, et cetera, et cetera. But today we're going to look at partnering with the power. Can't even say P's here. Partnering with the power. There you go. We're going to look at this subject matter as a second installment into this particular series. We're looking at the climactic years of the life of and spoiler alert, when we get to the end of this thing, God's going to actually call him out, and he's going to say, okay, I'm going to do it. And one of the reasons I think is because he was found hiding in a cave, and God wasn't pleased with that. But the president is coming upon climactic moments in his entire ministry. We're about to climb to the top of Mount Carmel, and we're about to see a fireball come from heaven. That's next time, by the way. But before we go there, there's some chapters that are really kind of interesting. And there was another section of this I really like to deal with, Zarephath, and that miraculous moment. But last time, you might recall, I was told to go and to hide, and being fed by the ravens. What a cool one, you know. And then rise up. Now, why God couldn't keep the brook going? I mean, he could, you know. He's feeding Elijah with the rest, so God's capable of keeping the brook going, but he chooses not to do that. And I asked several throughout the week, why is that? And one of the answers, I think, came from my daughter-in-law, who she said, well, you know, he needed to go and see the widow of Zarephath. And then she paralleled a woman at the well. And she said, you know, it talks about there in the book of John, it talks about Jesus going through Samaria. But really, geographically speaking, he didn't have to go through Samaria. Many Jews actually crossed to the other side of the Jordan, and they went up through Samaria. So what do you mean? He had to go through Samaria because there was a woman there who Jesus needed to talk to, the woman at the well. Well, Victoria said the same thing about this situation. She said, you know why the brook had to dry up? Because Elijah needed to go talk to the woman at Zarephath. I thought, yeah, that's actually pretty good. I'd love to have a whole lesson on that, but moving now into something that it's probably a section of scripture you don't even remember reading. It's certainly one that's familiar, to me, readily speaking. You know, it's kind of an obscure, but it's really a powerful passage with this idea of partnering with the power. Okay, here are things for you, though, if you're going to travel with me through this lesson, and you can have those ready. So questions. Do your own Bible study and make applications. Did you screenshot it? Well, here. Partnering with the power. 1 Kings chapter 18, verses 1 through 16. Many days the word of the Lord in the third year saying, go, show yourself to Ahab, and I'll send rain upon you. God says, okay, I'm done. We're going to wrap this thing up as far as the famine and with regards to the drought. That's what I'm trying to get at, the drought. So Elijah went to show himself to Ahab. Now, the famine was severe and called Obadiah, who was old. Now, Obadiah feared the Lord greatly, and when Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord, Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50s in a cave and fed them with bread and water. So pause for a moment. Partnering with the power. Now, remember, I'll be the one empowered by God with the great balls of fire, okay? But there's this guy named Obadiah, who you remember ever hearing this part of the story. It's very obscure. But this guy Obadiah, Ahab, but he's faithful to the Jehovah God, all right? And Obadiah has gone so far as to stand with God in his processes that he has actually taken some of the prophets who the queen, Jezebel, she wants to kill. He's actually hidden them, okay, underneath the nose of Ahab and Jezebel. He's taken them out of there and he's hidden them, all right? Application I'm going to draw with regards to partnering with the power. Sometimes you're going to have to risk civil disobedience. I've got an entire series, go to look it up. I've got an entire series on civil disobedience, Christians and civil disobedience. When is it appropriate, etc.? And believe me, it is appropriate. Jesus himself engaged in civil disobedience. Herod at one time was weighing down on him, trying to. Some folks came with a warning and they said, "You better get out of here." And Jesus said, "I'll stay here until I'm done with my job." When he went in the temple, that was civil disobedience. Okay. We are going to have people who grow a backbone to the point that we recognize that there are times when Christianity just simply with the civil laws of our world. And when that happens, we're not supposed to for trouble, but when trouble comes to our doorstep, obey God rather than men. Acts 5, but Peter and his apostles, we must obey God rather than men. We've got to be like that. I like this Obadiah character because even though you know that Jezebel wanted to kill those, Obadiah is hiding them in the caves because he wants to make sure that God's men are taken care of. Now, in this partnership idea, the partnering with power, I want you to notice two partnering things that are happening here. God, Obadiah specifically partners with God, but he partners with God by making sure that God is taken care of. Now, here in just a moment, we're going to see that he also partners with Elijah. Okay, but he's stepping up and he's having enough courage, backbone to actually stand with God's men. God's men are often asked to say things pleasant. They push the buttons, and sometimes they poke the bear. In the situation myself, some of my closest friends didn't have enough courage to stand beside me when I had the dark valley. There were no Obadiahs, and they need to repent of that, and they need to come to God. But it is, I can only be what I am called to be. And so as a man, I need to present the message of God, which sometimes causes your family to hurt, causes your friends to walk away, causes people to withdraw support from you, etc. You don't have any choice but to stand with God. You had some friends who were courageous enough that they'd stand with you. You know what I'm saying? Obadiah is one of those guys. He's going to stand not just with the 100 prophets, stand with Elijah here in just a moment. Then you got this intervening area. Ahab's going to say to Obadiah, basically, he says, hey, we need to go search out some places, we eat our animals and such. And so I'm going to go one way and look out over the country. You go another way and see if we can find any place that we can take care of our livestock. Then you get to verse 7. As Obadiah was on the way doing the assignment of Ahab to go looking for a place where he could, feed and water the livestock, Elijah meets him. So Obadiah comes across Elijah as he's going off searching the land, okay? And he meets Elijah, and Obadiah recognized him, and he fell on his face, and he said, is it you, my Lord, Elijah? The second thing I would say with regards to partnering with the power is that we need to be people ignited in the process. I think it's very important we recognize older individuals that they are supposed to come and bring to the table. With you, one of my greatest discouragements throughout the COVID, the pandemic thing, is seeing some folks who are supposed to be these spiritual giants who got all scared to death with regards to the fact that they might die and go to heaven. It just really has bothered me. I got to be honest. We looked in the face of death and we flinched. One of our greatest testimonies, I think, in life is the way we're going to die. And we need to be people who stand in such confidence with God that we're ready, even if a pandemic takes us out of this life. We're ready to go. Well, those individuals are few and far between. But if you find those individuals, stand with them. You need to wrap them up, stand right beside them, because there's a blessing to be had just by standing, man of God. I want you to notice that Obadiah is going to refer to Elijah as his master. That's what Lord means, master, okay? And so my master, Elijah, as he refers to him, making sure that he acknowledges him with proper respect because that he is led. Hebrews 13:7. Remember your leaders, those who spoke to you the word of God. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. The reasons we have elders today who are not being followed is because they aren't very shepherdy. In their previous life, the years that they don't have a clue how to raise children because their children have gone off into the world. Some are divorced, and so they don't have a clue how to maintain a really good relationship with their own wife. They're people that don't have the respect of the congregation, etc. And you put them in there. And in a congregation, because so many recognize that these are not men who have actually an outcome of the way of life that's worthy of following. But when you find some that have an outcome of the way of their life, and you look at them and you say, wow, that is a faithful person. And you can tell by the evidences of their life, the years tell that these are people who demonstrated great faith. And look at the results. When you find those people, and Elijah was one of those, when you find those people, you need to acknowledge and give way to them with respect and with honor. Number 3, we got to get some interview, okay? And he said, he answered, it is I. Yes, I'm Elijah. Go tell your Lord, behold, Elijah is here. And he said, how have I sinned that you give your servant into the hand of Ahab to kill me? Now, what is that supposed to mean? Well, he's going to explain. Where your God lives, there is a nation, or not a nation, a kingdom, where my Lord is not sent to seek you. In other words, you are a wanted man. And here he is, etc. Take an oath that they had not found you. We'd send people there trying to find you because Ahab wants you bad. His wife wants your head on a pole, okay? And now you say, go tell your Lord, behold, Elijah is here. Maybe that as soon as I have gone, the Spirit of the Lord is going to carry you to someplace I don't even know. So when I come to tell Ahab that I can't find you, he's going to kill me. I don't want to show up at Ahab's doorstep and say, I seen Elijah. And he said, well, how come he didn't bring him? Well, I'll go find him, and then I can't find you. I'm going to get killed. I think there's a really, really practical and very important application to be made here. And that is number 3. We need to confirm the partnership. Acknowledge your place. In acknowledging your place, sometimes requires some confirmation of your partnership. We are trying to partner with the power. Obadiah is partnering with Elijah, but he says, I need to have here. And there's nothing wrong with that. We ought not just go into things saying that, well, he stands in the pulpit every Sunday, therefore he has to be somebody's truth. Nonsense. I would say by far the majority of folks on Sundays don't speak the truth. What you've got to do is confirm these leaders. That's why I struggle so much with some of the elders that we have in our churches today. They have not been truly confirmed. You got a bunch of folks them to take over and to be in these positions, and they've not proven by their lifestyle that they're good leaders, etc. If anything, they've proven that they can split. How can we follow people like that? And yet we do, because so often we do not means and confirm the partnership. Acts 17. Now these were more noble than those Thessalonica ones. See the word with all the eagerness, examine the scriptures daily to see if the things were so. And the thing is amazing to me about that passage is they're examining the being taught is actually from the Bible. But you know who's teaching them? The apostles. You know, if there's a New Testament who was inspired to write and to teach, it was and yet these folks aren't taking it at word value. We're going to confirm it. We're going to go to the book and confirm it. We need to confirm our partnership. And that's what Obadiah is doing here. He is saying, listen, I need some assurances here. I'm going to go back to my master Ahab and say, I found Elijah, and then I can't find Elijah. What's that going to do? They're going to get me killed. Okay? It's okay to confirm. And then, lastly, trust what has been confirmed. Has it not been told, my Lord, that I've done when Jezebel killed the prophets of the Lord? And so again, he's still in the confirmation here. Elijah, I've tried my best to be faithful here. Jezebel's going around killing all the prophets. I hit 100 of the Lord's prophets by 50s in a cave, and I fed them bread with them. And now you say, go tell your Lord, behold, Elijah's here, and he's going to kill me. Elijah said, as the Lord of hosts lives, before him, I will surely show myself to him today. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab. The third part is trust what has been confirmed. Now, I want you to notice 2 parts of this confirmation. I want you to notice how far Elijah went to make the confirmation. He's making a promise. But that commitment, as the Lord of hosts lives, that's invoking the authority of God himself and saying that because God is, trust what I'm about to say. As a man of God, I lay my credibility. This is going to happen. And so that's the first part. The second here, and trust what has been confirmed, is that Obadiah understands it is. Now, this hasn't happened yet, but it's gonna. And Elijah has done many marvels to this. He has spoken the word in the face of difficulty and trial and persecution from old Jezebel, etc. And Obadiah knows that. Obadiah factors it all together. And he says, 1, Elijah has invoked the existence of God in his promise that he's going to show up. 2, I look at his past life, and I recognize this as a man of trust in this. And so he trusts in what has been confirmed. And Obadiah heads off. And so Ahab's going to go out and going to meet Elijah. Now that sets us up for the big, great that's going to come next time. You say, well, that's number 3. We've got 6 of these. You're exactly right. We got some good stuff that follows after fire that reflects back on the great balls of fire, but I'm getting ahead of myself. You're up in order to get that good stuff. You know what I'm saying? All right. One last thing. I guess I didn't read this, did I? Climactic. It's not kind of climactic. Elisha is the protege of Elijah. And Elisha is the guy who's going to replace Elijah. But Elisha has a protege. It's really interesting what happens when the man of God, who followed after the man of God, Elisha, who followed after Elijah. It's interesting what happens to this young man in this story. They're in Dothan by an army. The protege is saying, Master, it looks like we're about to get killed here. And Elisha says, don't worry about it. Basically, then Elisha prayed and he said, Dear Lord, please open the protege's eyes that he may see. So the Lord opened his eyes, and the young man, and he saw full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. God's got this. But the one was, the man of God could see, but his protege couldn't. So what does the man of God do? The man of God asks God, please open the eyes of my servant so that he can see as well. You and I are most likely going to be the protege. What do you do when you're standing beside the man of God? Snuggle in close. Ask the man of God if he won't speak to the Lord on your behalf. Be one of those that stands the great responsibility of and digesting all that you can from those that come into your life. But remember, mentors, by Scripture's definition, have got to be people who have proven themselves. Just because a guy comes along and he says, I think I should deserve to be something, or, you know, my grandmother was this, or my great-grandfather was that. Look at his life. He, as a mentor, proven himself by his own personal life and decision, he's worthy of being followed. If he is, then you snuggle up and ask him to teach you and ask him to bring the blessing of God to you, just as he's bringing the blessing of God to your mentor. If this lesson has been, I would ask that you please remember us in your prayer time. And if you can, add us to your financial gift as far as mission work is concerned. It's the first of the year, and I'll be honest with you, what happens. And every ministry knows this. There's like those letters, and they're going to say, Sonny, we've decided to put money elsewhere, or we're going to take, and we can't afford to support her because of the economy or whatever it may be. First year is always tough on ministries, because that's when, if you're going to, that's generally when people find it convenient to make a transition. So if you'd consider us bound to lose some, just it's a natural process of things. And so if we could get somebody, we could offset that. And that would mean a lot to me. Lord's Day, it's time for you and I to appreciate all that the Lord does. So keep it simple, keep it meaningful. When you take the communion here in just a, I pray that you will not only remember Jesus, but that you will be overwhelmed by the love of Jesus and what he did for you. You could have grace, sleep at night, and know that you're okay with God. Thank you for joining me today. Pray it's been a blessing. Sonny Chow saying, be there. Matthew 16:26.